Yo, what's going on, guys? In today's video, we'll be discussing some overviews of the deck and just some matches and how to play some of those matches. So without further ado, we're going to go to a deck list, and then we're going to go into why it is we play these cards and why these cards are good for each individual matchup. So to start off, we're going to have the two Tony Chopper that I discovered was actually pretty good in the deck, and I'll be explaining why it is we're choosing these cards to run. The two Brook, another really good card. Almost feel like that's a staple. We are playing the 3 Shariah blocker, and I'm also playing 3 of the Law blocker, which is actually going to be really good coming up in this format. It's actually really good right now. We're playing 3 of the Reducer Law. You're going to need him in a lot of matches. We'll explain why you should be playing him, why that card should not be out of decks. I see a couple of decks not running him, but I don't think that's the move. We have 4 of the Reiju. We have 4 of the Kid blocker. I have 4 Beppo. The Beppo ratio will be changing whenever I get more of the Bon Clay in, but unfortunately I don't have all my Bon Clays as of yet. But I will be explaining why you should be running that card and why you should be running it in multiples. We have 4 of the Otama, and I am playing 3 of the Ronor Zoro Rusher. Then we are playing 4 of the Kid and Killer Rusher. We're playing 4 of the Sachi and Penguin. And lastly but not least, we're playing 2 Fire Fist, playing 2 Gordon, playing 3 Raise Max, 1 Sanji, 1 Queen, and I only got 1 Bon Clay for the time being. I know that may be a little off screen. I want to push this up and kind of sort of go over this with you real quick. I know this is all kind of sort of just scrambled together, but I only got a little bit of space to work with. So this is the deck, and I want to explain to you why it is we're running the card choices that we're choosing to run. And we're going to start off actually down here with these guys right here. We're going to pull them forward, and we're going to start with the 2 Chopper and the 2 Brook. Now, the reason why you are running these are the same reason that you run Beppo in the deck. And I see some deck lists are not running Beppo. I don't agree with this. I think that the ability to ramp every turn is extremely useful. I do understand that the ability to play Bon Clay and then play a Raise Max to follow is actually also very powerful as a turn play. But being able to consistently have this, and I'll explain why consistently having this is actually really good here momentarily. But just being able to consistently being able to ramp is really good. But to go back to explaining these cards here, the reason that you are running these is because you want some sort of sticky removal, something that you don't have to wait to get, but that is already present and something that your opponent has to deal with. Now, we're entering into a state of the game where you have to start playing characters that need to be responded to, that if they are not responded to, then it sways the game heavily more in your favor. And I believe that Chopper and the Brook are 2 of those cards that do that for you. They're cards that if they stick, they have very, very, very good value. And in my personal opinion, they're worth running for the value that they give you. Even if your opponent does KO them, it was worth whatever your opponent had to use in resources to KO this card, because they recognize that these cards are that big of a threat. Having these cards on board again means that you have better card economy. So what that means is that you don't have to wait for another card to reduce with, and you don't have to use another card to reduce with. You're trading your Dawn for essentially a card in your hand to be able to do what one of your other cards would have been able to do, which allows you to keep more cards as opposed to use more cards to achieve your goal. Because again, if you have one of these on board and all you need to do is really reduce by 2, having to play one of these or even having to give up a Gordon to reduce something that you only need to reduce by 2 never really feels good. It never really feels good to have to Gordon a 5k monster. But whenever you have the Brook, it really, really helps. The Brook is also really good for the Uta matchup, which can be a problem, especially if you do not see any of your reduction in that matchup and they just outvalue you, you'll just lose. But if you have the Brook and or the Chopper in play, that matchup heavily goes more so into Law's favor. Again, Uta can be a problem for Law if they see all their value pieces and you can't play anything to take them out. Then these cards again help you so much for that. I had a game with the Uta player that I'll be uploading I had two of them. The first one was cool, but the second one was a lot better. I really wish I would have recorded it and been able to show that to you guys, because it showcased why the Brook is so important in that matchup. And seeing as Uda is a deck that people will be playing, it's relevant to have this. And this is also just good into any other matchup that you can play where they are running a bunch of lower cost or lower cost, higher attack monsters. So like you got a lot of different decks running some 4/6s or maybe some 4/5 3/5s. Even in the mirror match, this card is pretty cracked, because if they don't answer this in the mirror match, it's essentially the same thing as if you were to play the ace. So it just does that same thing for you, helps you clear your opponent's board. So the same thing with the chopper. If you have this over your opponent in the mirror match, then the game is in your favor, because you just have better card economy than your opponent, because you're not using as many resources to be able to get rid of things on board. Next up, I want to talk about the 3 Trafalgar Law blockers in here and why it is that you're running these. The reason that you want to be running these is because we will be hitting a format where there's a lot of decks that will have a lot of high card count in their hand. Again, when you're playing against Enel, since Enel is just one of our worst matchups, you want to have this in high count. Because it helps with that situation that I was just telling you about, where you need something that's going to help sway the game in your favor. And this is that card that helps sway the game in your favor, specifically in that matchup. There are some other matchups where he comes in handy as well. Just being able to pluck 2 from your opponent is very, very powerful. Even if you're not getting some of the cards that you want to see, you may be able to get some of the cards that your opponent really needs out of their hand, or just counter in general. I know that even if you're playing like a Whitebeard is getting very popular, so this is really good to have in the Whitebeard matchup, because it just makes it so that they don't have as many resources as they would like to have in the end game, and you're not burning as many to go ahead and take care of everything they have. And speaking of Whitebeard, we have the Shariah blocker. This is something that you can bump up to 4, but 3 is fine. This is something that you want to run for matchups where you have leaders that are higher than what they normally are, for leaders that are like a purple. I know purple Luffy. I don't know if it's going to see any recursions in this format. I doubt it. But even if it does, just being able to have this for if they do play the kid and boost up their leader to 6 every single turn, you have something to deal with it. And other decks like Yamato, which are much more relevant in the format, it just helps for being able to make sure that you're not using as many cards to protect yourself, which again is your card economy, which is a problem that the deck had. And this just helps make sure that you can go ahead and have that card economy, that you're not using as many resources to protect yourself, or to keep your hand size down. So that really helps for making sure that you have cards. I don't really think that Sachi and Penguin need explaining, or why it is you run this at 4. It's just a very obvious staple in the deck. The Beppos, the reason why you want to run the Beppos in the deck is because it's a card that not necessarily your opponent doesn't have to answer, but they always feel as if they have to. This is a card that your opponent never wants you to have on board, simply because it's just giving you that additional Dawn, making it so that your leader ability is 1 less Dawn every turn, so you're never actually losing Dawn. You're always staying at the same exact Dawn every turn. Beppo is just allowing you to just never ever lose Dawn, to where you're just always going to be at the exact Dawn that you need, whatever it is that you're trying to do. That's why you really want to run Beppo, because again, once you use the Bon Clay once, it's just a one-time use. You don't get any more Dawn off of it, and that 1 Dawn can be beneficial for you. But again, if you don't have any other Dawn ramping, then you just got 1, and that's it. And that doesn't really help you in the grand scheme of things. So just keep that in mind. And going back to the Bon Clay, even when I do get more Bon Clay, I am only going to be running Bon Clay at 2. The reason why I'm only going to be running Bon Clay at 2 is because him only having the 1,000 power means that in any mirror match, he's going to get bottomed. I don't want to say that in any mirror match he's going to get bottomed at, because I've played mirror matches where my opponent has just had a Bon Clay most of the match, but it hasn't done anything. Like, most of the time the Bon Clay is on the board, he's really just sitting there until something big comes. Like, he really just does that 1 ramp, and that's it. And then you just have to wait for your opponent to play something big, and by that time they've already gotten rid of it or done something to move it off a board. So in that retrospect, Bon Clay just he just doesn't feel like he does as much as you would like him to do. This is a great card. It's a very good card. Again, Bond Clay into your Raise Max Gordon is a very, very powerful combo. I'm not denying that whatsoever. But what I am saying is that for his second ability, it just feels a little lackluster, especially him only having a thousand. It just feels like you're always trying to wait for them to have that creature, and then you're kind of sort of disadvantaging your board state to get the swing off for him, because you essentially have to swing first with him to make sure that the thing that you actually want to minus is high enough, because if you minus it before you swing with him, then he'll get whatever their current minus state is, and that doesn't help you out at all. So you always want to like swing with him while they have the bigger creature on board. If it's a blocker, then you just have to leave the blocker as it is, or if it's not a blocker and it's just a bigger creature, you just have to leave the bigger creature as it is and then wait. He's great into the Gecko Moria matchup, don't get me wrong, but if we're just playing him for that one very particular matchup, which he can very much still get popped, then he's only mid at best. Like I say, he's just an okay card. He's not that great of a card. I still will be running this at 2, but like I said, I don't think it's my personal opinion worth running it for. I could be wrong. Somebody can go ahead and correct me. Kid really doesn't need any more explaining to why you're running that 4 in the deck. It's just a really good card. Again, another one of those cards that says you just lose 1 less Don per turn for your leader ability, so you'll always be at the same Don every single turn. If you play Kid behind something that ramps, then you'll essentially just go up 1 Don the following turn, which does help you in certain niche situations to just have that additional Don in case you don't have rampers. But yeah, this is just a really good card to have on board, especially when you just get multiples on them. If you're able to get multiples on them onto the field, then you're just in a pretty good spot. The Reijus also, they're just good for card economy, making sure that you always have cards in your hand. These are cards that you want to avoid discarding, because these are essentially your pot of grease. These are essentially what keep you with good hand presence throughout the game. So you really want to just try and not discard these if you can. Like, I understand that you'll be in certain situations where it is what it is, but if you can avoid getting rid of these out of your hand, I would avoid getting rid of these, because they just provide you with so much value and keep you so it keeps you so into the game and seeing all the pieces that you need, that whenever you see it, you just know that you're going to get 3 for that turn, which is very, very valuable for law. But being able to draw for turn, then drawing 2 more is very, very incredible for this deck. Moving forward, you are playing the 3 of the Reducer Law. The reason why we're playing 3 of the Reducer Law is because he helps really a lot in Gecko Moria matchups. Sometimes in the Sakazuki matchup, whenever they play a Kuzan, you can go ahead and play this to go ahead and bottom deck that or get it out of the way. But more so in the Gecko Moria matchup, he's just an MVP in the Gecko Moria matchup, because he just makes sure that any of their major pieces that they want to see, you're able to get rid of, and you don't have to use a Raise Max or a Gordon to be able to do it. I'm not saying that it's bad, but that's the only match where you really don't care that you had to use one of these to do that. He's just, like I say, really good in that matchup for making sure that you get rid of the units that you don't want your opponent to see. And then we're going to talk about the 3 Raise Max. I'm going to actually talk about these all together, because they're not the same card, but they are the same. Well, these are essentially the same exact card, and I'm going to tell you why I'm running Fire Fist here. Sakazuki is still a thing in the format. We're still going to have to deal with that. So having this really helps for whenever you're trying to get rid of the Rebecca and the Sabo, so you're able to KO one and then reduce the other. This is assuming that obviously they didn't Sabo that turn, but maybe they Sabo later down the line. And because I noticed that, I would say that Barso also, because they still play Barso, so if they have a Barcelino, you can go ahead and pop the Rebecca, reduce the Barcelino. It's really good. It's still very good in this deck. And also, again, seeing as Uda is going to be a lot more relevant in the upcoming format, at least until OP07, and even then I still think people might still be playing the deck. This really helps wherever they play 7s, so this really helps you get over the Luffy blockers a lot easier. And like I said, it helps in the Sakazuki matchups. It also helps in the Gecko Moria matchups, because again, they're still playing Rebecca's, so you still want to see these, because you still want to be able to KO those cards. That's the only reason I'm running 2 of these instead of switching these out for another Gordon and another Raise Max, is because again, these still have insane value in the format. and they still work very, very well. Even if you're at a low Don, even if you just have 3 Don, you only need 2 to be able to use this, and then you can attach 1 to your leaf or swing, so that you've used all your Don more efficiently. I know that using Don efficiently can be a problem. Also, this is kind of sort of a surprise factor. Whenever you do play this, and whenever you attach 1 Don to your leader swing while they still have a 6K blocker on the field and they don't block out, and then you activate this and you've used all the 3 Don that you need to use for that turn, it just feels really, really good. That's why I really like this card. Like I said, there's just certain matchups where you need that extra 1,000, and this really, really helps with that. And in combination with the Brook and or the Chopper, then you're also reducing by a total of either 6K or a total of 5K, or I'm sorry, a total of 6K or a total of 7K with either one of those. And then in combination with these, it's a total of 7K. And -7 can be very, very useful for a lot of situations. Like if you're playing against Enel and they do play a Yamato, -7 puts the Yamato in range. Also, -6 puts the Yamato in range, or I'm sorry, the Yamato in range. So if they have a Yamato and you have a Fire Fist, or if you have 2 Gordon, or if you have a Fire Fist and a Brook, or a Chopper, then you're gonna be able to get rid of any of those creatures. And it's the same thing with, like, if you have Brook or Chopper in play and you have any of these cards, then it's the same thing. Like I say, that's one of the reasons why I say these cards are just really good in the deck, because the previous problem with the deck is that once your opponent hit a certain threshold of attack, you can't get over that. Like, and the threshold is 7. Once your opponent just starts playing characters that are 7K and above, then the Gordons don't really do anything. That's, like I said, when you start needing Fire Fist or you start needing card combinations. And this really helps so that you don't need to use as many cards, as I said. So if you're in a situation where your opponent has played something that's 7K or above, now you just have a monster that can reduce by 2, and then 1 that can reduce by 3. That's 5. And you only used 1 card out of hand and 1 Don for that. That's really, really good card economy. That really helps you, like I say, not have to use as many cards. And I know I'm repeating myself when I say this, but I want to emphasize it before we go on to the matchup portion of this video. Again, with the Kitten Killers, again, they're just rushers. You really just want to see your rushers. The reason why we're playing the 4 Kitten Killer and the 3 Zoro is because with these you can go into your Enel and your Sakazuki matchups a lot easier. And not to say that the Sakazuki matchup is kind of a 50-50. It's just, it is what it is. If they see their cards, they do. If they don't, they don't. But when you have this many rushers in the deck, Sakazuki only runs 8 2K counters. On average, the deck only runs 8 2K counters. So when you think about that, if you're constantly rushing and you're constantly taking away their 1K counters, and keep in mind, they essentially need all of the cards that they have in their hand. Every card has some sort of use or value to it. When they have to discard cards, it's not necessarily something they want to do. It's something they have to do to keep in the game. But 9 times out of 10, they're very bricked up. You know what I mean? So if you're just constantly applying pressure with your rushers, there's not too much that they can do against that. Like they're going to answer them with pop, but that doesn't help when you've already got the value out of the creature. So you run the 4 3 7s because, again, you just want to see a good amount of rushers. You don't want too many, but you want enough to where you can apply the pressure to those 2 decks in particular, because they can be a problem. And Uta, like I say, can also be a problem. So being able to apply pressure against that deck is actually very, very useful, because, again, it just means that you're just draining cards out of their hand. And again, also for your Gecko Moria matchup, because you want to drain cards out of their hand too. You actually want to hit Gecko Moria with 7 as many times as you can a turn, because the thing is that they're always going to respond with discarding cards if they can. They're always going to respond with a 2K or a 1K. And one of the biggest problems that you'll have with playing against Gecko Moria is that you're probably swinging a bunch of 5K swings into them, and they're answering all of those 5K swings. This is because you need to be swinging in that deck very particularly, because most of their 2K counters are cards that they need. a good number to swing at them is 6. 7 is actually great because it forces them to get rid of 2 cards out of hand or take a life. And depending on, and when you're playing this deck, Gecko Moria never really wants to go into the 7-card range because they acknowledge that you play Law. So when that happens, you essentially can take advantage of that misplay on their behalf, because if they're staying at low hand count just to avoid being Law, then they're getting rid of precious pieces just to avoid being Law, which is can be detrimental to your opponent. That's not always the best move for someone to do, to just go, oh, I'm just gonna keep countering out so you'll never be able to Law me, but then I've countered out with some of my pieces I need to reduce, or some of my combo pieces, because it's like there's been times where like, oh, I can get rid of my Otama in my hand, but I need to combo it with my 4-cost reducer Law so that I can reduce that by 4 and bounce it, or situations like that. So you want to present your opponent with situations like that as well, to where you're essentially forcing them to lose pieces that they need, and playing more rushers helps with that. It takes away from your ability to defend yourself because you're playing a lot more bricks. But if you're in a situation where you open up with a bunch of rushers, honestly, you should just start playing your rushers. I don't usually recommend just throwing out your rushers early game, but if you don't have anything in hand and you're not drawing counter, then you need to start considering not using your leader ability and just start swinging high with your rushers. Like you can be in a situation where you have no Dawn Ramp, no real counter in hand, you don't have much, then obviously trying to establish a board or trying to create multiple creatures on board, especially if you're going against a deck that has an ability to remove, isn't going to help you out at all. So your best bet is just to start swinging high, and just keep swinging high and keep making it to where they have to answer the one creature that you play on board, which is going to be your rusher. So every turn you can go 7 with lead, play a rusher, 7 with rusher. They answer the rusher, they try and attack you. You lose whatever counter you have, or maybe you just take the life. But again, if I open up and I see that I've got like if I see I've got multiple rushers, like I've got 2 Zoros, I've got a Kid and Killer in my hand, I'm not finna try and build board. I'm not finna try and Dawn minus, do all this extra stuff. I'm just really just gonna play a rusher a turn, and if I can play a blocker, if I have ramping, then yeah, I'll do that. But I'm also still just gonna focus on I'm just gonna go 7, play Sachi and Penguin and pass, and then I'm gonna go 7 with lead, or however much I need with lead, and then put the rest on this swing, and just really apply pressure to my opponent. Really, that's what you really want to do if ever you see that you've just opened up with nothing but your rush characters. You just apply pressure. That's what all the deck is telling you to do. Just apply pressure this game. Just make sure that your opponent has no resources and just keep swinging in. This Sanji is really just in here for the Enel matchup. There's no way of searching it, and it's only a 1 of, but again, it's pivotal in that matchup. If you're going second and you play this turn 1 and you use this effect turn 1, by the time your second turn comes around, most of their Gadatsus are dead. If not, actually all their Gadatsus are dead, because the only thing it'd be able to hit in the deck would be this and these, but these don't have any value to you outside of the on play or being a 2K counter, so you don't really care about that. So you really need these in that matchup. They really do help sway the matchup into your direction. After doing a bunch of play testing against Enel, I can tell you that if you don't have this, then you'll be very sad that you don't, because you'll know there's no opportunity for you to draw it, and to be the one card that you want to see. It'll be this and the blocker laws are the cards that you just want to see against them, because it just means that you're going to be reducing your life, so they won't be able to KO your characters as easy, and you'll have a 7K swing, and you'll have more cards in your hand. So it helps, like I say, with a bunch of stuff. It helps with your hand economy, which can be really good and sometimes really bad. Queen, great blocker. She's in here just for the purposes of helping you to see more of the cards that you want to see. Playing a Queen and then behind that playing a Reiju is actually pretty powerful, and it's very useful for you actually, for drawing 4 cards for card effect and 1 card for turn. So that's 5 cards. You essentially got a new hand for the turn if you play her behind the Reijus, which is the ideal thing to do. I think about going up to more Queens so I can have more of that card combination, because again, being able to draw 5 a turn is very powerful for this deck, and